the boy suddenly heard movement in the woods. He hurriedly used his frail little body to shield his father. Sure enough, a ferocious black bear burst out of the forest. But the boy walked straight toward it. His eyes never blinked as he locked his gaze onto the bear. Man and beast stared at each other for 5 full seconds. Incredibly, the bear was frightened off by the boy's stare. His father sternly warned him not to tell anyone what happened today, because the boy had been granted the power to control beasts by the gods. If the cult of evil spirits ever found out, it would mean certain death. In the blink of an eye, the boy grew into a man. He farmed honestly every day and raised dogs, doing his best to hide his extraordinary nature. But one day, the village was suddenly surrounded by cultists. His father led the villagers in desperate resistance, only to be crushed beneath the enemy's iron hooves. Mark ran back frantically to help, but was struck down and knocked unconscious. His dog, Arrow sticking out of its body, still dragged Mark desperately toward safety. When Mark finally woke up, his loyal dog lay dead beside him. The village where he had grown up was burned to the ground. The bodies of the villagers were hung from wooden stakes. He swore to completely wipe out the cult of evil spirits, and avenge his father and his people. Glancing at the eagle that had survived thanks to its ability to fly, he set out on a path of revenge with it by his side. He decided to hide in the mountains first and train his sword skills. One day after training, he went to rest by a river. 2 little mice cautiously poked their heads out, and swiftly stole Mark's flashy little leather skirt. Mark jumped up and chased after them. But he was too focused on the chase and missed his footing, falling straight into a swamp. The more he struggled, the faster he sank. With no other choice, Mark looked at the mice with pleading eyes. At that moment, his beast-taming power took effect. The mice bent a tree branch downward, and Mark grabbed it and climbed out. But he accidentally flung one mouse into the swamp. In the blink of an eye, it was swallowed under the mud. Mark quickly reached in and pulled it out. Covered head to toe in filth, man and mouse smiled at each other. From then on, Mark had 2 adorable little companions. One day, the eagle suddenly let out a warning cry. Through the eagle's eyes, Mark saw several cultists violently whipping something. Climbing to a higher vantage point, he saw it was a black tiger. Without hesitation, Mark charged in. The eagle launched surprise attacks from the air, while the mice stole the enemy's bows. Once freed, the black tiger bit straight through the enemy's throats. From that day on, Mark gained another follower. The young man quietly lay atop a rock, peeking at a beauty named Sandra bathing in the pool below. Suddenly, an idea struck him. He picked up a mouse and whispered a few words. The little creature ran off and stole Sandra's clothes. Seeing this, Sandra hurriedly chased after it, only to have her path blocked by a black tiger. Mark seized the chance and stepped in as the hero. He first soothed Sandra by following the sound of her voice, then pretended to roar angrily and scared the tiger away. He thought this performance would make Sandra fall into his arms. But Sandra was a proper woman. She thanked him and walked away. The more Mark thought about it, the more unwilling he felt to let it go. He chased after her with his companions. They followed her all the way to the outskirts of a city. Along the road into the city hung dried corpses. Mark instinctively felt this was not a good place. Sure enough, once inside, there wasn't a soul in sight. Everyone had gathered around an altar. On the altar, a high priest held up a small boy and threw him alive into the flames, calling it a sacrifice to the gods. After throwing one in, he claimed the gods were still displeased, then casually pointed into the crowd. Another boy was dragged up. Mark was furious and wanted to rush forward to save him. But he suddenly spotted Sandra among the crowd. The boy was already lifted high. Another child was about to be thrown into the fire. Mark immediately communicated with the eagle. At the moment the boy was tossed down, the eagle swooped in and snatched him away. The crowd believed the gods had revealed their will. Everyone dropped to the ground in worship. Only Mark stood stiff-necked, glaring at the high priest. The high priest instantly realized who was behind this. But for now, he could only smooth things over. That night, Mark escorted the boy home and asked the boy's father about Sandra. He learned that Sandra had been captured by the high priest and was about to be taken to the temple as a sacrifice. Mark immediately decided to go save her. The high priest, meanwhile, was not idle. He handed a ring with an eye embedded in it to his men and sent them to kill Mark. While Mark was drinking water, completely off guard, he was ambushed. Luckily, the black tiger arrived in time to help, but fell into a trap while chasing another enemy. The enemy's crossbow was already aimed at the tiger, when suddenly a club struck and knocked the attacker out cold. A burly black man and a young boy burst out laughing arrogantly. Mark thanked Big Black and Little White for their help. He shared the spoils of battle with them. By sheer bad luck, Little White chose that very ring. As a result, every move they made was watched by the high priest through the ring. The 3 of them rescued Sandra together on the road. Only then did they learn Sandra was Little White's cousin, and that Little White was actually the king's son. The king was now imprisoned inside a pyramid. The high priest held absolute power and rapidly expanded the cult. The enemy of your enemy is your friend. Mark decided to help them rescue the king, then kill the high priest and eradicate the cult together. They infiltrated the pyramid with ease and quickly found the imprisoned king. But his eyes had been gouged out, he was blind. Still, as long as he was alive, that was enough. The rescue went smoothly from start to finish. Unbeknownst to them, it was all part of the high priest's plan. He knew the king would never spare him, and would gather all his forces to kill him. That way, he could wipe them all out at once. Sure enough, the king's first move was to strike back. Mark advised him to plan carefully first, only to be publicly humiliated. The king called him a monster because of his beast-taming power, and kicked Mark out of the group. Mark was so angry he was on the verge of tears. The very next day, terrible news arrived. The king's men failed to kill the high priest. Sandra, Big Black, and Little White were all captured. They were to be burned alive in front of the king. Mark might not care whether the king lived or died, but he would never abandon his friends. By then, Sandra had already been dragged onto the altar. The high priest raised a dagger, ready to spill her blood. Mark fought his way toward the altar in a frenzy. The high priest tried to threaten him with the king's life. But Mark didn't care. He stabbed the priest with a single ruthless strike. He then scooped up Sandra and prepared to leave. But the high priest wasn't dead. He was about to strike from behind, when a mouse searching for Mark saw him. One little mouse leapt at the high priest, dragging him down into the sea of flames. The war ended with the mouse losing its partner. Little White inherited the throne and ruled the nation wisely. Mark wandered the world with the woman he loved, Sandra. A little mouse poked its head out from Mark's waist, and beside it were two even cuter babies.